The moment Victoria slammed her expensive designer handbag onto my desk, spilled a hot caramel latte across 3 months of hand-restored historical property deeds, and giggled, saying, "Oops, sorry sweetie, you are so fast at typing anyway," I did not yell. I did not cry. I did not even wipe the sweet, sticky coffee off my sleeves. I just smiled, looked her straight in the eye, and realized something terrifyingly simple. Victoria had spent 6 full months trying to destroy my life, push me to my absolute limit, and make my work environment an unbearable living nightmare. But she had completely forgotten one crucial detail. I was the one who held every single key to her darkest professional secrets. If you have ever had a toxic, entitled coworker who drove you to the absolute brink of insanity while management turned a blind eye, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Trust me, today's story delivers a dose of sweet, calculated payback that you are going to savor down to the very last second. My name is Clara. For 5 long years, I lived in a calm, orderly world made of aged paper, historical bindings, thick leather files, and crisp, perfectly organized spreadsheets. I worked as the lead archivist and primary data input specialist for Sterling & Vance, a prestigious, old-money commercial real estate firm nestled right in the heart of downtown Chicago. While the hotshot brokers were out sipping expensive whiskey and closing multi-million-dollar office deals, I was down on the lower concourse level, tucked away in my quiet, serene sanctuary. My job was meticulous. I digitized physical deeds, cross-referenced historical land titles dating all the way back to the 1800s, and manually logged daily financial transaction summaries into our firm's master ledger. It was tedious work to most people, but to me it was pure art. I am a person who thrives on structure, quietness, and order. When I sit at my desk, I put on high-end noise-canceling headphones, lay out my color-coded pens, and immerse myself entirely in the deep rhythm of my work. I do not go to the office to gossip. I do not go to play corporate games or brown-nose executives. I go there to do what I was hired to do it flawlessly, and go home to live my private life in peace. For 4 peaceful years, the cubicle right beside mine sat completely empty. It was absolute bliss. My days were predictable, quiet, and deeply satisfying. Then came Victoria. Victoria Vance. Is that Vance? She was the 24-year-old niece of our senior managing partner, fresh out of a luxury liberal arts college, armed with 0 actual technical skill, a $3,000 designer wardrobe, and an insatiable desire to be the center of attention every single second of the workday. Because the main sales floor was fully occupied, management decided to dump Victoria in the quiet archiving wing, right next to my private workstation. They gave her a basic entry-level role, which involved verifying digital client records and logging daily client interactions. Simple work. A child could do it with 10 minutes of basic training. Except Victoria did not want to work. Victoria wanted an audience. And unfortunately for me, I was the captive audience, sitting less than 3 feet away from her desk. It started small on her very first week. I was deeply focused on inputting a complex deed transfer log, a task requiring absolute concentration because a single misplaced decimal point could miscalculate property tax liabilities by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Suddenly, a heavy shadow fell over my monitor. I pulled down one side of my headphones, expecting a brief, professional question. Instead, Victoria leaned heavily over my fabric partition with a massive iced coffee in her manicured hand. She looked down at me, flipped her bleached hair over her shoulder, and asked if I knew where the good coffee creamer was kept, because the break room stuff smelled like poor people. I blinked, thoroughly stunned by the sheer absurdity of her comment. I calmly told her that the main kitchen down the hall had what she needed, and reminded her that I was in the middle of a delicate audit. She just laughed, told me to go off and do my little typing thing, and ambled away. I thought that would be the end of it. I was deeply mistaken. It was merely the opening salvo in a relentless campaign of psychological irritation. Every single day without fail, Victoria would interrupt me. It did not matter if I had both headphones clamped securely over my ears. She would tap my shoulder violently, wave her hands directly in front of my face, or toss crumpled sticky notes into my lap just to make me look at her. And the topics were never related to company business. She would ask if I thought her ex-boyfriend was stalking her social media. She would ask why we used spreadsheets at all, complaining that Excel felt so outdated, and wondering out loud if we should start a TikTok account for old property deeds. She would ask if the new lawyer in legal was single, or complain about the weather, or talk endlessly about her weekend party plans. I shut every single conversation down with cold, professional brevity. I would tell her I did not know. I would tell her I was extremely busy. I would ask her to speak with her direct supervisor. Did she listen? Of course not. She was completely immune to basic social cues and normal human decency. Even worse was her hideous treatment of our senior training staff. Victoria was assigned to train under Marcus, a brilliant, soft-spoken senior clerk who had been with the company for over 15 years. Marcus was patient to a fault. He explained our secure database protocols to Victoria at least 6 times. He printed out detailed instruction manuals for her. He highlighted step-by-step guides and placed them neatly on her desk. Did Victoria take notes? Never. Did she retain a single shred of information? Absolutely not. Instead, whenever Marcus gently tried to correct her glaring mistakes, Victoria would roll her eyes, walk directly past him, and march straight into the department head's office. The department head was Mr. Henderson, a close personal friend of her uncle. She would whine about how Marcus's teaching style was outdated and aggressive, claiming that our computer systems were unnecessarily complicated, and blaming everyone except herself for her utter incompetence. The atmosphere in our entire department withered. Within 3 months, every single worker on our floor was forced to wear heavy industrial ear protectors or thick over-ear headphones just to drown out the sound of Victoria's loud phone calls, her endless personal drama, and her constant grating complaints. The absolute breaking point, the moment my cold indifference turned into something far more dangerous, happened on a dreary Tuesday morning in October. My colleague and closest workplace friend, Sarah, walked past my desk with a heavy cardboard box tucked under her arm. Sarah was a phenomenal worker, kind-hearted, meticulous, and always willing to lend a helping hand when someone was struggling. I took off my headphones and asked her what was going on. Sarah gave me a sad, weary smile, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She told me she had just handed in her 2 weeks' notice, and that today was her final day at the firm. She was taking a much lower-paying job at a local nonprofit. I was completely crushed. I asked her why she was leaving a company she used to love. Sarah leaned down and whispered softly, confessing that she could not take it anymore. She revealed that Victoria had spent the last 3 weeks going over her head to Mr. Henderson, taking full credit for Sarah's weekly report summaries while secretly whispering behind her back that Sarah was incompetent and slowing her down. Just the day before, Mr. Henderson had awarded Victoria the quarterly performance bonus that was rightfully Sarah's. Sarah was a single mother who worked 60 hours a week to support her daughter, and she simply could not survive in an environment where toxic parasites were rewarded just because of their family name. A cold, heavy rage settled deep in the pit of my stomach. Sarah walked out the door with her box, her head held low. 10 minutes later, Victoria slid into her office chair next to mine, spinning around playfully like a child on a playground. She popped her gum loudly and asked if I knew when Sarah was finally clearing out, complaining that Sarah's vibe had been so negative lately. I froze. My hands hovered over my keyboard. I turned my head slowly toward her and told her plainly that Sarah had just left for good, and that it was entirely because of her. Victoria laughed. It was a sharp, shrill, dismissive sound that echoed off the cold walls. She told me to get over it, claiming Sarah left because she could not handle high-stakes corporate pressure. Then, without a hint of shame, she asked me to show her how to log into the master tax directory again because she had forgotten her password for the 4th time that week. That was the exact moment the final wire snapped inside my brain. Victoria did not care about the job. She did not care about the lives she destroyed. She felt entirely untouchable because of her last name. She thought I was just a meek, quiet floor mat she could step on whenever she pleased. She had no idea that beneath my quiet exterior burned a mind that analyzed patterns for a living. And I was about to analyze her right out of a career. My revenge started with hardware. Because I spend 8 hours a day entering massive streams of complex numerical data, I am extremely particular about my workspace tools. When I took this position, I bought my own custom mechanical keyboard. It was an elegant, matte black board fitted with silent red switches. It was whisper quiet, buttery smooth, and produced virtually zero noise, allowing me to type at over 100 words per minute without making a sound. At home, however, I had a second keyboard. It looked identical from the outside, but underneath the keys, it was fitted with blue mechanical switches. Blue switches are famously, unapologetically loud. Every single keystroke produces a sharp, metallic, deafening click that sounds like a vintage typewriter firing off continuous rounds of ammunition. I had never brought it to the office because I respected my colleagues. That night, I put my quiet keyboard in my bag and brought the loud blue keyboard to work. The next morning at 8 sharp, I plugged it in. Around 9, Victoria strolled in, holding her customary iced coffee, looking thoroughly unprepared to do any actual work. She sat down, applied her lip gloss, and pulled out her phone to watch videos. Then I started typing. The sound was sharp, loud, and relentless. It echoed through the room like rapid gunfire. Victoria flinched instantly. She shot a look over the cubicle wall and asked me what that awful noise was. I did not pause my fingers. I told her calmly that it was my specialized archiving keyboard, and that I had a massive backlog of financial data to enter today. She grimaced and asked if I could type quieter, complaining that the sound was giving her a migraine and keeping her from focusing on her calls. I paused, looking at her with an expression of pure, innocent confusion. I apologized gently, but explained that this was standard equipment required for high-volume data archivism, and that my hourly speed was strictly monitored by management. I told her I was sure she understood the absolute necessity of high productivity. Before she could form a reply, I turned back to my screen and began typing with even greater intensity. For 3 straight hours, I pounded the keys. It was pure psychological torture for her. Every time Victoria tried to relax, browse social media, or gossip on her phone, the sharp, metallic rhythm invaded her brain. She tried putting in her earbuds, but the loud click of the keys cut right through her music. She tried leaving her desk, but whenever she returned, I was right there, typing at maximum speed. For 2 solid weeks, I subjected her to this auditory nightmare. She grew visibly agitated, nervous, and utterly miserable. Her concentration shattered completely. She complained to Mr. Henderson, but when he walked down to check on us, he found me working furiously, generating flawless, perfectly formatted reports at double my normal rate. Henderson praised my incredible work ethic and told Victoria to let me do my job. But the loud keyboard was merely phase 1. It was designed to shatter her focus, make her desperate, and push her into making a catastrophic blunder. Phase 2 was where the trap closed completely. Because Victoria refused to learn the database systems, she had started secretly sneaking over to my computer whenever I stepped away to use the restroom or pick up documents from the printer. I knew this because my computer mouse was never in the exact spot where I left it. Instead of locking her out, I created a very specific lure. On my desktop, I placed a prominent folder clearly labeled as the Confidential Master Executive Financial Overrides. Inside that folder lay a highly complex, official-looking spreadsheet detailing 5 years of commercial property evaluations. It was filled with beautiful formatting, impressive header logos, and glowing summary calculations. To an untrained eye, to someone like Victoria who desperately wanted to impress executive board members without doing any actual labor, it looked like the ultimate goldmine. It looked like a document that could make a lazy assistant look like a brilliant financial prodigy. Except for one detail. Every single calculation in that document was subtly, brilliantly altered using custom formulas. The summary page looked completely normal, but if you exported the file without running a specific validation script that only I possessed, the numbers would recalculate instantly, inflating property valuations by 400% while completely wiping out tax liabilities. It was a digital landmine waiting for an idiot to step on it. On a Friday afternoon, I left my desk for a lengthy coffee break with Marcus down on the main floor. When I returned, I noticed Victoria sitting upright in her chair, her cheeks flushed with excitement as she texted rapidly on her phone. I checked my computer log. The trap folder had been opened, and the modified spreadsheet had been copied directly to her personal flash drive. She had taken the bait, hook, line, and sinker. The following Monday morning was the annual Sterling and Vance Executive Board meeting. This was the single biggest event of the fiscal year. The firm's founding partners, major international investors, senior brokers, and managing directors gathered in the top-floor glass boardroom to review the firm's financial health. Around 10 in the morning, a frantic rumor spread through our floor. Victoria had walked right into the executive boardroom before the meeting started, completely bypassed her department manager, and handed her uncle a brand new streamlined financial overview report. She claimed to the entire board that she had spent weeks single-handedly analyzing company data to optimize their tax strategies, hoping to bypass years of hard work and get an immediate promotion. I sat quietly at my desk, folded my hands neatly and waited. 10 minutes passed in absolute silence. Suddenly, through the ceiling panels, we heard the muffled, thunderous sound of heavy screaming coming from the penthouse floor. 5 minutes later, the high-speed elevator doors on our floor opened with a sharp chime. Out marched Mr. Vance, his face bright red, veins pulsing wildly on his neck. Flanking him was the firm's chief legal auditor and a visibly shaking Mr. Henderson. Trailing behind them was Victoria. She was crying hysterically, her expensive dark eye makeup running down her cheeks in messy black trails. Mr. Vance slammed a thick stack of printed papers onto my desk, his voice echoing across the entire floor as he demanded to know where I was. I calmly removed my headphones, stood up and asked how I could help him. He pointed a shaking finger at the papers and screamed that Victoria had just presented this property valuation report to their lead investors. He shouted that according to these figures, the firm had committed massive federal tax fraud and lied about liquid assets by over $40 million, nearly giving the board of directors a collective heart attack. He demanded to know why this data was in my master archive system. The entire office fell dead silent. Every keyboard stopped. People stepped out into the hallway to watch. Victoria sobbed loudly, pointing a trembling, manicured finger directly at my face, screaming that I had sabotaged her on purpose, that I had left those files on my desktop, and that I knew she was going to use them to help the firm. I looked at Mr. Vance with an expression of complete, innocent surprise. I spoke softly and clearly, telling him that I had no idea what Victoria was talking about. I explained that our official master archives were secured on a double-encrypted server that required dual authentication, and that any file stored locally on a desktop was merely an unverified, structural formatting test file. Then I turned my gaze slowly toward Victoria. I asked her gently, in front of the entire executive team, if she had logged into my private workstation without my permission. I asked her if she had stolen an unverified local draft file from my computer and presented it to the board of directors without checking the formulas or running the basic data validation protocols. Victoria gasped, her mouth opening and closing like a fish stranded on dry land. She stuttered, trying to claim that I was away from my desk and that I was not doing my job properly. I replied coldly, stating that I was on my authorized 10-minute rest break. I added that if she had attended even one single training session with Marcus over the past 6 months, she would have known that rule number 1 of company IT protocol is that local desktop files are never exported for official presentations without head archivist approval. Mr. Vance turned his gaze toward his niece. The look of absolute horror, embarrassment, and fury on his face was terrifying to behold. He whispered in disbelief, asking if she had truly stolen unverified internal draft files just to parade them in front of the board and take credit for work she did not even understand. Victoria sobbed hysterically, begging her uncle for forgiveness, crying that she was just trying to show everyone how smart and capable she was. Mr. Vance roared at the top of his lungs, telling her that she had almost triggered a full federal investigation into the firm. He ordered her to pack her belongings immediately. Victoria shrieked in horror, asking if he was actually firing her. Mr. Vance yelled back that if he did not fire her right this second, the managing partners would fire him by the end of the day. He commanded her to clear her desk, warning her that security would be downstairs to escort her off the property in less than 10 minutes. The next 10 minutes were absolute poetry. As the entire office watched in glorious, unbroken silence, Victoria wept uncontrollably while shoving her personal items, lip gloss, and designer desk trinkets into a cardboard box. Her hands were shaking so violently that she dropped her phone twice on the carpet. Nobody offered to help her. Nobody said a single word of comfort. Nobody said goodbye. Marcus sat quietly at his cubicle, taking a slow, peaceful sip of his morning tea with a subtle, deeply satisfied smile resting on his face. As 2 heavy security guards stepped off the elevator to escort her out, Victoria picked up her heavy box, shot me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, and hissed that I had ruined her life and that I was nothing but a quiet, pathetic freak. I did not raise my voice. I did not get angry. I simply leaned forward, rested my hands lightly upon my mechanical keyboard, and met her tear-filled gaze with a calm, razor-sharp smile. I pressed down on the enter key, producing a loud, sharp click. I wished her a wonderful afternoon, and softly reminded her not to forget her special coffee creamer on the way out. She let out a choked shriek of pure rage, turned sharply on her heel, and was marched right out through the glass doors, never to set foot inside our building again. In the weeks following her chaotic departure, the energy in our workplace transformed completely. Mr. Henderson issued a formal written apology to Marcus, restoring his full performance bonus with added interest. Management implemented strict new data access protocols, which came with a massive promotion and a significant pay raise for me to oversee the department as Senior Archive Director. As for Victoria, rumors quickly spread through the industry that her uncle refused to write her a reference letter, effectively blacklisting her from every major commercial real estate firm in the city. Sometimes arrogant people assume that quiet, focused individuals are weak targets. They mistake our silence for compliance and our quiet focus for passivity. But they completely forget that the people who sit quietly in the corner, paying close attention to every single detail, are usually the exact ones who know precisely which thread to pull to make their entire world come crashing down. If that story brought a smile to your face and gave you a sense of sweet justice, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button right now. Drop a comment down below telling me about the most satisfying workplace payback you have ever witnessed, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories just like this one. Until next time, stay safe, keep your eyes open, and take care.